So there was something I was thinking about. You know me, I've always got like these thoughts, in my head. And I was thinking about like the managers who are out there these days. And I was trying to compile a list, of just managers who, if someone was to ask me, yo, who's like your top five managers, out there in football? And I think, I had Pep Guardiola, of course, as number one, Luis Enrique as the number two. And then after that, I felt like there was a lot of managers who were just in that kind of mold of you got Arteta, you've got Vincent Kompany, a lot of people like Nagelsmann, obviously Thomas Tuchel over there at England. I mean, I like Roberto De Zerbi. He's another good manager. I mean, Jose Mourinho, where do you put him? Kind of in the list. Xabi Alonso, of course. I know he had that stint at Real Madrid, but whatever. There's so many managers that I'm just not thinking off the top of my head, and I felt like, yeah, we're reaching a stage now where there's not that many, would I say, and again, it's just my personal opinion, in terms of world class managers. Where maybe there's a changing of the guard in regards to managers we would deem to be, at the absolute top level. Now, obviously, listen, Arsenal might be able to complete a double, and then would that change? Yeah, most probably. If you're able to win a double, especially the Premier League and the Champions League, I have to put you in that kind of category. When you're a manager, really and truly, managers are more than likely going to be, if you're talking about elite managers anyway, you're going to be judged on trophies, style of play, and stuff like that. But trophies is definitely going to be something that we're going to look at, as a main contributing factor, right? I know people don't like that conversation. Our trophy shouldn't matter and yada, 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 but ultimately it does. It's vitally important for a manager. If you're going to be talking about them in such high esteem, we need to be looking at, well, have they won anything? Have they done anything? And obviously at this moment in time, when you look at the likes of an Arteta, where I do think he is a good manager, where you haven't won anything, there's going to be question marks, placed upon you, kind of thing. And I think that's where a manager like him kind of fits in. Vincent Kompany, whatever you want to say about the Bundesliga, he's gone in there and he's won. He's gone in there and he's done it. Whatever you want to say about that league. Luis Enrique, we know what he's about. Barcelona, he's been at Roma, he's been at Spain, he's been now obviously at PSG. He's won things, where he's kind of been, been able to kind of imprint what he's been trying to actually do, in the actual team. Xabi Alonso, obviously, of course, went unbeaten, in the Bundesliga. So he's showing he's a manager who can, he can get his teams kind of ticking in a certain kind of way. And yeah, like I said, I like De Zerbi. I think De Zerbi is a really, really good manager, but I'm just looking around at the landscape and there's not that many top level managers. The ones I would have considered, let's say 5 years ago, Jose Mourinho, Carlo Ancelotti, Zidane, these kind of guys, they don't really do it. Obviously, Ancelotti's at Brazil. Who knows if Brazil win the World Cup, then maybe I'll change my tune. I mean, he's like a legendary manager. Jose Mourinho, legendary manager. Pep Guardiola, I mean, he's still winning. So he is, legendary. Plus, he is just still one of the, if not the best manager. In fact, he is the best manager, around out there. But this changing of the guard, and I think that's something that I feel we need to take into consideration, as fans, when we talk about our clubs, right? And we talk about, we want, our clubs to potentially sack a manager and stuff like that. Now, listen, look, of course, I'm not saying that just because you want to sack a manager, that it has to then be for, it can only be for like this world-class manager. Of course, listen, there's not that many, if any, really around other than Pep and Luis Enrique. So it's going to be difficult for you to then demand that. But there's not that many experienced managers at winning. I always felt like back in the day, and I say back in the day, I'm making myself sound really old, but let's say even like 10, 15 years ago, I always felt like there was enough managers around. The likes of like a Jurgen Klopp, for example, the likes, as I say, the Pep Guardiola, he's obviously just been doing his thing, Carlo Ancelotti, Jose Mourinho, still, in his kind of, would I say, not prime, but yeah, just still kind of doing his kind of thing. Obviously, Roberto Mancini, he's another really, really good manager. I'm just trying to, Jupp Heynckes, obviously at Bayern Munich, didn't he win the sextuple? Trying to think, man, there's so many I'm just missing out off the top of my head. You guys can obviously let me know in the comment section as I'm, just trying to think. But it just felt like there was more managers. Now I feel like there's a lot of young managers, who, and listen, I guess that's just the way it is, right? There's no actual problem with that in itself. But I think when people then talk about managers and they talk about, where we're so quick in this generation, we do this with players mostly, but we also do it with the managers. We're so quick to put a label on a manager. We're so quick to put a label on a player. Is he the best? How long does it take to be the best? What puts that person as the best? Is it just one season that allows for you to be called the best? Is it 2 seasons? Is it this trophy? Does that trophy mean anything? Is it this style of play? Is it that style of play? There's so many things that I think we're just so quick to put a label on it. We don't actually ever give anybody any time. So, for a prime example, you look at someone like Arne Slot, right? Came in his first season, won the Premier League off the back of, moving to Liverpool after Jurgen Klopp had obviously left. People put him in conversations that he was never in, prior to joining Liverpool, right? Now, this season, he's been doing absolutely atrocious, in terms of just everything about him in a general sense. Now it seems like his stock is even lower than it was before he even, joined Liverpool. And you think to yourself, did people just put him too high? Did you not wait and give it time in order for you to really make that kind of judgment? Again, the trophies played such a massive factor. You coming in, winning a Premier League title in your first season and not really struggling, so to speak, in terms of that. Was that one of the reasons? I look at Mikel Arteta. Some people say, of course, I think he's a really good manager. I think he's up there in terms of being one of the better managers in world football. Elite, no. Like I said, trophies are going to be his defining factor in terms of where I would place someone like him. But again, another young manager, someone who's learned under, the greatest manager I've ever seen in my lifetime, in Pep Guardiola. So he still needs to go out there and kind of just, fly his wings. Do you know what I mean? Xabi Alonso, went to the big time, went to Real Madrid after, doing really, really well at Bayer Leverkusen. Didn't work out there at Real Madrid. Has his stock obviously fallen? Do people look at Xabi Alonso the kind of same way? Roberto De Zerbi now, he's obviously in at Spurs, trying to keep them up in the Premier League. If he does so, on top of his stint, at Brighton, on top of his stint at Marseille, how well does he kind of favour? Nagelsmann, he's another manager I look at and think, okay, he's an interesting one. I don't really know where to place him. I think he's a good manager. Can he reach the top? Don't know. Went to Bayern Munich, didn't really work out, over there for whatever reasons. Obviously now he's managing the German national team, so he's clearly a manager who's well thought of, and I know a lot of people do like him. Thomas Tuchel, again at England, if he does well for England, does his stock right? Like, it just seems like no one's really, it's a bit like the player situation that I feel, which is no one's really taken the mantle. And I guess Pep Guardiola still being here is going to be difficult, right? So maybe once he leaves and once he, stops managing for a little bit, maybe someone can take up that mantle, or maybe a group of individuals can take up that mantle. But we just seem like we've passed Jurgen Klopp, we passed the Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, Ancelotti, Jose Mourinho, kind of, the elder statesmen, in the game, the guys who have been there, done that, got the t-shirts. We've now passed it on over to the Artetas, the Vincent Kompanies, the Xabi Alonsos, the, people of that kind of ilk. Luis Enrique, I feel like he kind of fits like in the middle of those two, weirdly enough. I don't know why. He just feels like he's in the middle of that because he's technically still part of that older era, but he weren't popping when they were popping, if that kind of makes sense, So it's a bit different for him. So maybe he's the one who almost bridges the gap to those other, managers. If a Pep Guardiola was to stop managing, Enzo Maresca has been talked about potentially taking over at Manchester City. Clearly, he's held in high regards as well. So I think when we're looking at the manager landscape, like who are like, I really, what I want to know is who are like your top 5 managers, out there. Whatever say top 5. I want people, we'll make it a bit more difficult. I want people to name their top 10 managers out there. If you had to do a list of top 10 managers that you think, yeah, he deserves to be in 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, etc., currently right now. So however you rank it, so whether that means you take in their legacy, whether you don't take in their I don't really care. Just who do you think are the top 10 managers right now? And I'll make it even more difficult. You cannot put Pep Guardiola in your list. I'd love to know. I'll put my list probably in, I'll pin it as a comment. So I'll let you guys obviously see it. But yeah, like I said, I just really want to know, like, in terms of the manager landscape, because for me, it's not really popping like that. As much as I would love Arne Slot to leave tomorrow, I'm like, okay, cool. I want you to leave, but then the only other guy I wanted was, if I obviously I can't get Pep Guardiola, so really I want Luis Enrique. I don't think I can really get him. After that, it's like, yeah, I like Roberto De Zerbi, so I'm like, I just like his football, so I'm really just going for that. I'm not really here thinking about if he's a winning manager, so to speak. I'm just more, yeah, I like his football kind of thing. Whereas I didn't really feel like that was the energy before. I felt like you were picking guys because they were true winners. They were guys who were going to come in and really propel your team forward, kind of thing. Whereas I feel like everybody else now is almost like a project kind of manager where you're like, yeah, give it like 3-4 years, and yeah, maybe this guy could get you to, this kind of level, which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing for football. I guess we'll wait and find out as to, how that kind of goes. And I think over the next couple of years, obviously, like I said, we've got the World Cup coming up. That might change a few opinions as to who's good, who's not good, and etc. etc. But yeah, I just think it's a really, really interesting topic. It's a really interesting thing. And I would love to know from the people in the comment section as to, your kind of top 10 managers. Where do you feel like the landscape of managers is kind of going? Do you think it's obviously it's being affected by the football that we're seeing? So are you liking the direction that we're kind of heading in? Do you think it's a good direction? Are you happy with the direction in terms of the football, in terms of the managers kind of coming through? Is there anybody who says Fabregas kind of thing, who's just kind of maybe doing something a little bit different and a little bit more exciting? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts though in the comment section, people, and I will catch you guys real soon.